Thank you so much for having me here. Good afternoon, San Francisco. Hope everyone has had some coffee to go through these remaining sessions for the day. I'm actually really humbled to be here in this esteemed crowd and looking forward to these sessions to learn as well as make these amazing connections. For today's topic, as Moni mentioned, I'm really passionate about how we can use data-first approach to drive team effectiveness. So let's jump in. I think Bonnie went over a lot of these things, so it's made my life simpler. But in a nutshell, what I do is I help early-stage companies to launch their products and later-stage companies to scale without breaking. And the reason is because I am really passionate about nurturing individuals and companies through the growth phase. So let's jump into today's topic. When people hear measuring team effectiveness, the first thing they talk about is DORA metrics. Yes, DORA metrics is helpful, but that's not all. So what I'm going to cover is airing all the dirty laundry that I have seen that you have to go through along the journey. And for that exact reason, what is important, as Simon Sinek says, is starting with the why. So let's see why it's important. The first is, what is the team doing to deliver against the top line, against the business? And at Headspace, when we measured the impact, it helped us see the diversification of product lines that was needed. The second, tech resources. They are the most expensive resource, usually at a company. So how to make sure that you are optimizing it and you can do more with less. At Cruise and Microsoft, we were able to drive consolidation and remove overlap, thus accomplishing more with the same resources. And this is not just true for people, but when you apply that lens even for software, you can follow the similar consolidation model and driving utilization. The third, motivation. There is no better motivation stick than showing the ugly truth from the data. And I've seen this over and over again. For example, when we launched Azure Machine Service at Microsoft, when we saw the data, we were seeing adoption metrics drop, and the team automatically prioritized that, shifted the other planned items in the roadmap, because they realized the importance of having growth initiatives in light of the ugly truth of the adoption metrics. And last but not the least, excellence. Excellence is being outstanding. The only way for that is measuring where you are and where you want to go. What this means is you want to plan for it and then drive things that will up-level and attract and retain talent. It creates a flywheel. The measurements show where the team has to make improvements, which leads to driving team efficiency, which then leads to better business outcomes and success, as well as increased operational efficiency. What that then leads to is higher team morale. Let's dive into the comprehensive approach at measurement, which we will cover across the three themes, which is product, process, and people. So first theme is, what is the strategic value the team is delivering? So some of the questions that you want to cover in this is, how did the team do against hitting the goals? Did the solution meet the problem that we started with? And some of the KPIs are product and revenue KPIs. The second is the how. So how is the team doing in delivering against the plan? How is the quality and time spent in running the business? And the third category is who, which is our people, our key asset. What is our team pulse saying? And what is the talent composition and utilization needs for us to understand, are we being efficient in that particular category? And as we dive deep, keep in mind the measurements are not just quantitative. Their qualitative measurements are equally important, and I'll be highlighting some based on the experience that I've had. For each theme, we will cover what to measure, and the most important is how to follow through on that. So with that, let's delve into the first theme, which is strategic impact, the what. So measuring strategic impact to evaluate the effectiveness is critical, and I find it's very similar to using a compass in an uncharted territory. It ensures the team is on the right path, and it's aligned with the organization's capabilities. So with that, the measurements are adoption and usage, but equally important is the outcome. Many times I see the teams just focus on the adoption, but not the latter. I've seen, for example, at Headspace, if you're just focusing on the adoption of the Headspace app, you don't know whether the end goal of the person being happy and mindful is achieved. So both are equally important. Let me walk you through an example where we drove, and some of the bold ones are the ones that I'm going to talk about. It doesn't mean others are not important, but it's just prioritization and seeing what is going to be most impactful for your company at that time. So let's talk through the growth funnel. So at Headspace, we drove 70% improvements in the growth funnel. And how we did that was first scaling the basic metrics. So we basically worked on getting more tooling integrated across marketing, across finance, across the advertising and adoption funnels. So getting our tooling up. And this is also for you to decide when, as a company, is the right time to scale the tooling. It's not a requirement, but depending on your needs, you can see where it fits best. Then debate and analysis. This was the most crucial step, because which KPIs, which areas to invest, and how. So do not underestimate this step, and do not just jump the gun as well. The other third part that was crucial is working across groups. So in order for us to optimize the growth funnel, we realized that marketing had their own pieces, finance had their own pieces, product had their own pieces. They were not aligning. And so how do you drive these initiatives alignment? How do you drive the KPI alignment? It was a funny story, and which you wouldn't even think that would be the case. When looking at some of the subscription and revenue KPIs, each of these groups, marketing, finance, revenue, product, engineering, they all had a different definition of some of these basic standard KPIs as well. And they were interpreted differently. So there's a lot of nuances when you start using and when you start peeling the onion. You realize that you want to drive that alignment on the KPIs, the definitions, and then you can drive into optimizing that. So do not underestimate this particular step. So next, let's talk about how to follow through. And in this, as I was saying, both the qualitative check-ins are critical as well as quantitative check-ins. One example of the qualitative check-in is the customer problems, experiencing those firsthand. And at Cruise, this was done amazingly well with leadership role modeling it right from gun-go. So we used to have our operations persona, which would manage launching all the autonomous vehicles in the parking lot, launching it out on the field and back. And so we would showcase these during all hands. So you didn't have to wait for in-person sessions. You can do these virtually as well. And showcasing them at all hands and being able to share what is one thing that is the highlight, as well as one thing which is being humble, was super helpful for people to learn and grow from it. The other example is on the quantitative side. The key over here is starting the check-ins. You don't have to wait for all the ducks to align. One of the examples I want to talk about is the project milestone. So as and when you're having an experiment, you have a hypothesis about that experiment, and then once the team launches it, you want to make sure that it met the outcomes or what are the learnings from it. And at one particular project, once the team launched, we were like, OK, let's review the data and the numbers. And lo and behold, people were like, oops, is this the right KPI? Is this the right definition? Is it implemented in the right way? So the key over here was not underestimating the importance of data. It's not a side effect or a small thing on the side. It should be given the same importance as requirements. So just like you have the requirements review and alignments of features, similarly, you need to have that for data. At the same time, similarly, you have the testing of features. You have to have testing of data. The last thing you want is people using the data, which is bad quality, and so your decision-making is now going off skew. Let's jump into the second theme. So we covered how to measure and assess what the team is delivering. In this next one, we are going to measure how the team is, we covered how the team is delivering on the impact. Here, we are going to cover how the team is delivering on the execution side. So with that, what are the measurements for execution and operational excellence? The way I see it is, it's like having a routine car service. You want to have these checkpoints to assess and quickly fix things that are either blockers or risks. And so doing that as a repeat checkpoint is super helpful to cross-correct quickly and early on. I want to share a story where it's not always about going faster or the bigger number. And here's the counterintuitive story, which is at Headspace. When we looked at some of the incident metrics, we realized that a lot of them were due to quality issues. And so we had to make a hard decision of what do we do, whether we pause, because all the small things were not helping. So we had to actually pause the full release. And this is no joke at startups when you are constantly delivering value prop and improvements to drive the revenue. So it didn't come as an easy decision. But at the same time, it was very, very impactful to bring that culture shift and to take the time to do it right. So it means you have to sometimes go slow to go fast. And we took kind of a couple of months to get our quality and automation in place. But it helped engineers to then feel satisfied and confident when they were releasing. So we went from just being a whack-a-mole at all of the issues to being in control of our destiny. The second example that I would like to talk about is honing in a specific metrics. This is where it's not about what other company is doing, what are the metrics or what are the standard things. You need to know what is the pain point your teams are struggling with, what will be the metric that will help out. For example, when looking at incidents, one of the metrics that we honed in was the incidents due to quality, where we were seeing a number of 70% of our incidents could be avoided if we had the right quality gates. So we've set the goal to bring that down to 15%, drove a lot of initiatives to get there, and constantly measured and evaluated how we are doing against that goal. So don't be hesitant to throw away all the standard metrics and be honed in on specific metrics that you want the team to drive and make an improvement. The next one is following through. In this one, you have these multiple checkpoints, and the most standard being your execution reviews and your operational reviews. I like to embrace the model of keeping it simple. So at Cruise, we drove around 30 to 40% efficiency across sprints by looking at just the standard sprint metrics. So we started looking at standard sprint metrics across all the teams, and seeing what we can do to drive improvement, but we empowered the teams to do that. So we made the shift for teams to start looking at their sprint retros, along with the qualitative things, look at what are these sprint metrics telling the team and how they should adjust. And this helped us to discover various improvements and driving efficiency in ticketing, whether it is dependencies, whether it is estimation, or whether it is the scope and requirements clarity. And it, in turn, helped us to deliver things on time and have on-time completion of projects. Just like any change, the team was resistant and pushed back because they don't want to see and be measured. But eventually, the leads saw the improvement. It helped towards our better project management and championed the change. The next one I want to talk about is show and tell. And so this is, again, a little bit of a counterintuitive scenario where the quality measure from show and tell is so very powerful. And what I mean by show and tells is doing every 2 weeks or whatever cadence works for your company, having the whole engineers and everyone come together and demo what work they did. So it's demo in progress. Don't need to wait for the perfect thing. Whatever you've worked, even if it's not released, even if it's not kind of checked in, showcase it. And this was so powerful because it helped everyone to have the knowledge sharing. And as companies grow through scale, knowledge sharing and communication becomes one of the biggest barriers. And so how do you foster some of these mechanisms to share as well as celebrate the wins? And I would highly encourage, it also helps everyone to see and align what the customer and product capabilities that we are building. So that takes us to the last section, which is team dynamics. And that is the talent magnet of how do we evaluate our biggest asset. So right people are our greatest asset. But if you put fences around people, then you get sheeps. So give people the room they need. So how do you assess the right people are on the right bus? And how do you drive the culture of innovation? One of the examples is a Glint score and Glint pulse survey. So we focused the metrics for management because management was the face of the company to the individuals. So if we can, elevate managers, then that would have a force multiplying effect. And so we focused on initiatives that learned first what are the challenges, focused on initiatives to empower and train them, which resulted in 9-point improvements of the management score. The second story I would like to tell about is the span of control. So the importance of organization, principles, and composition. What is the ratio of PM design, eng, TPM? What is the span of control? What's the depth of level from an individual contributor to the CEO? And at Cruise, we had these principles and guidelines set up. And again, you can always have exceptions, but this helps to align on the model that's going to work for the company effectively. And trust me, you need these guardrails or guidelines when you're going through a growth phase, when you're going so fast, to be able to make sure that you're not kind of, going off the track that you'll need to fix down the line. So having some of these is really helpful as a tool for measuring and evaluating your team. The follow-through for these are two prongs. One is the scaling. Oops, it didn't go. Yeah. So follow-through is scaling the communication one-on-ones. So the talk huddles was a very effective model for me. What I mean by talk huddles is talking to 5 individuals and then rotating those over the period of 6 months. And you get to connect with them. The cases I would cover is what's top of my mind and what are the things that they would like to stop, start, or continue. And these things would power such interesting dialogue, helping me to influence and show them where I was coming for some of the decisions, learning from them to understand where is the communication drop and how to lean into for areas that they have surfaced. And the second story is around high-performing org reviews. These were very crucial when we did this at Cruise, and it helped to take the comprehensive view of the organization, which is looking at the org health, the pulse, the workforce distribution, which is the ratios and spans and layers, as well as org structure and talent composition. It helped us to infer our hiring strategy, as well as helped us, as we did reorgs, to understand where and how to adjust. So what are the takeaways? There are three key learnings in my mind that applied and that I take forward. One is focused KPIs. So, and I'm sure she's kicking me out, so let me run through. So the focused KPIs and getting exec supports to lean into those KPIs. And the second one is starting small and scale with the right owners and tools. Sometimes I've done things where I've started without any tool and just used spreadsheet and Google Forms to get the insights and data. Don't hesitate to do that. Don't wait for perfection. And the last is leveraging the cross-group collaboration and looking at that bigger picture. We've had engineering efficiency improvements of around 25% from non-engineering areas because the whole software development workflow was optimized in the section outside of Eng. So don't underestimate that power. And be curious as well as lead with questions always. Last but not the least, these team transformations and effectiveness are not overnight, so don't forget to repeat, rinse, and over-communicate. Celebrate the journey, and in closing, as Jim Collins says, information is only helpful until it's turned into data that cannot be ignored and is actionable. So swallow the dirty frog and embrace these data insights to drive team effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavini. I think my takeaway is you really have to be thoughtful about team effectiveness because it's just not going to come naturally. So I appreciate sharing all of your tips and tricks. So we have some time for questions, and we have quite a few lined up. Let's start with this one. What are some common pitfalls in team evaluation that you've observed, and what strategies can mitigate or prevent them?
I think some of the common pitfalls is what I was talking throughout the area is either you're just focusing on one aspect of not looking at the comprehensive product, process, and people. Because if you're just saying, OK, team pulse is going to be everything, no, if the team is not delivering effectively, if it's not meeting the impact, then it's still not effective. So the key is looking at that comprehensive area. And the second one I would say is watching the trend, right? It's more around the journey. So as long as you're trending in that right direction, you're seeing the work that you're doing is contributing towards that success, and listening.
All right. Next question. How do you align tech team goals with broader business objectives using the data-driven insights?
I think they shouldn't be different. Tech team goals should be the company goals. It's just tech is using a different enabler to meet those, and similarly, other functions will use other enablers to meet those goals. So I think that's the key thing, is it shouldn't be different. By that, what I mean is sometimes you would have tech operational, tech depth, all of those goals. But those need to be translated to simplify and explain to the stakeholders. For example, when we were driving the pausing of the release, our goal was, yes, tech depth and improving tech quality. But the why was aligned with the company. We were losing revenue because our systems would go down, which means our customers couldn't purchase, which means we were short on the cash flow projections that we had. So it all ties back to the company and the outcome. If you are improving some of the efficiency, your resources are now being used in a much more effective way, which means you are driving the revenue because your COGS effectiveness is much more. So just look at how you can tie the goals and whys along with the top-line company goals.
That's a good point, very good point. So here's an interesting one. Can you share insights into the cultural and mindset shift that tech leaders need to facilitate when transitioning to a data-driven team evaluation model, the change management aspect of it?
Yeah, I think the change management is very crucial, and that's where I was talking about some of the follow-throughs, because just having data is not going to cut it. As I said, right, you have enough of the data right now from your standard tools across all of these areas, but that is not sufficient if people are not using it. So anytime when you're taking the team through the change, they're always going to be resisting when you have eyes and floodlights on them. So how do you kind of call out that bigger picture of the why? Helps them to understand that this will make their lives easier. It will remove roadblocks from their lives by having clarity of some of the processes and workflows, or getting clarity on the KPIs and the impact that they have to deliver on. So do not underestimate the time it takes for these shifts. That, in my mind, is the very, very crucial thing. You'll have sometimes CEOs for the first time, they're like, this has to be done. Why is this so difficult? Well, it is difficult because it's not just writing code and shipping it and making it happen. It's people. When you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with shifts, you have to have more alignment across everyone and then bring about the change. So definitely, embrace, making all the iterative changes while staying true to your North Star.
Amazing. Okay, how do you ensure the data-driven evaluation approach remains relevant and adaptable in an ever-evolving landscape?
I think that's an excellent question. Thanks for whoever asked it. Because in my mind, if you saw some of the examples that I was saying, and that's why I was airing the dirty laundry, is some of the KPIs, you might even have it for a quarter. Some of the KPIs might be across multiple quarters. So this is the luxury and goodness of data, is you don't have to stick to it. You can have the higher level areas, but your focused KPIs can be changing, just like you have experiments. You're experimenting, you have hypotheses. Once those things are done, you shift to the next hypothesis or next experiment. This is similar to that, is focus on certain areas, make changes, and then shift to the next one. So do not stay fixated on one thing, because you've done maximum to milk that cow. So now move on to the next.
All right. I think we have a few more. So for scenarios where teams are leveraging rapid prototyping to validate a hypothesis, and they have to iterate a few times to get it right, how do you account for the cost?
I think the way we had done that was we actually shifted and internalized to the number of learnings. Because every learning is help you get closer to the end goal, and you might change your strategy around how you're meeting to the end goal. So the key is you don't want people to just do paralysis analysis and sit in a waiting pattern, or just be overconfident and take the longest time to build the perfect product. You want this iterative approach to learn along the way, validate your hypothesis. So as long as you're showing the progress, as long as the team is saying these are the learnings they got, I don't think it's a cost that is sunken. It is actually cost that's saved, because otherwise you would have gone down the line investing the whole palace when you didn't need that. So I think it's just shifting your mindset and not saying, the experiment that didn't work is a failure. No, there's no failure. It's basically success and learnings that will help you to stay course.
All right. Okay, we have, I think, time for one or two more. So what is the correlation between a data-driven approach and employee engagement, satisfaction, and retention within the organization?
So I think the way I see it is your employee satisfaction is not just engagement. Like, that gives you one angle of how the employee is feeling or what's the sense they have. But if you have buggy code and they're spending more time in fighting fires and not actually building new things, they're going to be dissatisfied. If you don't provide them the tools to do their job and have to do manual testing, they're not going to be satisfied. If the company is not meeting the end goal and the KPIs, the company is not going to make progress, or it's not going to grow, which means there's not the morale is down. So all of these things lead towards overall is the employee satisfied. And that's why it's really important to not just get fixated on one area, but looking at what are all the other things that are contributing towards it. In my mind, it's very similar to if you think of from the customer standpoint, right? You have the customer satisfaction score or you have customer reviews. They are all giving you that high-level picture, but there is various small things that contribute towards getting there. And how do you break down those secondary, third-level KPIs and data points to give you the tools to drive the final impact of satisfaction?
It's a more holistic view of satisfaction. Okay, one last question. What is the difference between execution review and operational review?
Great. So the way I foresee this, and people might have different contexts for it, execution reviews are you have a roadmap for your roadmap, your quarterly plans, et cetera. How are you doing against those milestones? You have certain launches. How are you doing against those releases, as well as some of the experiments that you plan to test out? Operational is post-launch. How are the current systems doing? How is customers viewing that current system? Is the systems down? What is our system utilization? What are the latency numbers? What are the availability numbers? What's the retention of downtime error count looking like? So all of that, what's happening in production once things are launched is the operational review, and execution is all the things before that. Yes, operation then becomes the entry point into execution, because when you have postmortems and you have incident action items, you have to get it prioritized into your execution roadmap, and sometimes you have to drop other features to prioritize these, because you don't want to have one more outage if you know what are the causes that are contributing towards it.
All right, one last question. It's the question I've been asking all of the speakers. What is something you enjoy so much that you completely lose track of time when you do it?
I think traveling and being outdoors.
All right, so you just like to get lost in your travels.
Learning from nature and being in nature.
Awesome, I love it. All right, thank you, Bhavini.
Thank you so much, everyone, and great questions. Bye.